What's up guys, Joker here. Today we're finally going to sit down and take a look at the Tek Syndicate Standard Issue gaming mouse, which just released last week, and I've been anticipating this mouse for quite a while, ever since I saw Logan start teasing it. And I remember the first time I saw it, I was sitting in the background and I saw that Burning Earth logo on the mouse, and I recognized that logo immediately because I've been using it as my start button for years. Which is why I have like a Tek Syndicate desk mat and the mouse and all that stuff. I mean, I like to support those guys, but I also I like the logo to match. It's a cool logo. I mean, come on, it's a cool logo. So anyway, I was pumped when the mouse finally did get released over on epicpants.com at $35, and they're using the Pixart 3310 sensor in here, just like in my Mionix Castor, which has been my daily driver for like 6-7 months now. It's like my favorite mouse of all time, so it's a great mouse. And they're using the same exact sensor as that. They're also using the same switches, so they've got the Omron switches, which have a 20 million click life cycle. So starting off right there, they're just hitting the ground running with a really good base to make a quality mouse where you know accuracy and duration of the switch, the life duration of the switches is not going to be an issue, which when looking at a mouse is really the things you should be primarily concerned with. So looking at the design of the Tek Syndicate mouse, it is a little on the longer side compared to what I'm used to on my Mionix Castor, and that took some adjusting for me personally to get used to. It's 129 millimeters versus 122 millimeters on the Mionix Castor, which, might not sound like a lot, but trust me, it is when you're switching from a peripheral that you're using with your hand, 8-12 hours a day when you're working. It's a big adjustment for me. So if you're out there with a little bit larger hands, then you're probably going to appreciate the length of the Tek Syndicate mouse. I would actually compare it to something maybe along the lines of like the Zoe mice as far as the size is concerned. The Castor is definitely on the smaller side, and I found that it's actually suited my personal grip better because of it. I use kind of like a hybrid between like a fingertip and a palm grip, so my hand tends to sit a little bit further back on the mouse. But if you're a full palm grip or a claw grip person, I would say that the Tek Syndicate mouse is an absolute dream. But because I've gotten so used just to my hand being on the Castor and sitting further back with that fingertip grip that I like using so much, I found myself subjectively drifting towards the Castor when it just came to the shape and size of the mouse. But for palm grip, claw grips, like I said, you're going to be home and hosed on the Tek Syndicate mouse, I think. So I mentioned on the left and right click, they are using Omron switches, so that means you got a 20 million click life cycle, so you shouldn't have to worry about these things breaking on you anytime soon when you are using them. When I first got the mouse, I actually noticed what I thought was like a little bit of play in the left mouse click. If I would actually not press it down all the way and just kind of wiggle it and just tap it, there was kind of an audible noise, and I thought maybe it was loose at first, and maybe it was a manufacturing defect, possibly. So I went a little bit further. I talked to Logan, I asked him if he had it. He said no, it was not having any issues. It was performing as they had intended from the factory. So I even checked over with Brian P over at Bad C Tech and had him look at his mouse just to make sure that we were all on the same page and that this wasn't an issue.
Right, so I just received my Tek Syndicate gaming mouse, and Joker reached out and asked me to address a small concern he was having to see if this was a defect or part of the design. And the right mouse button is very firm, don't have any wiggle room or play until it's firmly depressed. On the left mouse button, however, you do have a little bit of play there that comes with an audible click until it is fully depressed. So after conferring, I can say that my sample also has this, so not a manufacturing defect, but probably part of the design from the initial run.
All right, so thanks to Brian over at Bad C Tech. Be sure to check out the link to his channel in the description below if you want to check him out. But basically what I came to the conclusion of is that this little bit of looseness here in the left click is probably due to the adjustments that they made in the design, because this was from a pre-existing mold, which is how they kept down the cost so much on this mouse. But one of the changes they did make was to the sensitivity on the left click, because they thought it was a little bit, I guess, stiffer maybe before they made the adjustments. So I think so they made it a little bit looser, and as a result, the actual button is a little bit looser on here. So that makes a lot of sense. So we do have physical toggles here for our DPI adjustments, which range from 1 all the way to 5,000, which go in 1K increments, so you can just go ahead and toggle between those. I tend to sit on around 4,000 Windows speed setting of 6. That's what I find to be about the best for me, because I am running between a 4K and 1440p panels, so I like to have a fairly high DPI setting. Also have no complaints whatsoever as far as the mouse scroll wheel is concerned. I thought that by default it was a little bit slow at scrolling through web pages, but I just went into the Windows mouse options and adjusted the sensitivity for the scroll wheel, and it was absolutely fine. I mean, this mouse doesn't have any software that comes with it. There's no software that comes with the mouse, and you don't really need it either. It's just an extra thing that you really don't need. I mean, look at this. I can change my scroll wheel's sensitivity and my mouse pointer sensitivity within the Windows options. I mean, who knew? So in case you're wondering about the small clear piece of plastic behind the DPI switches, I did speak to Logan about this. It's actually part of the pre-existing mold that they used to try to keep the cost down on this. That used to have an LED there, but they thought it looked kind of gaudy, and they decided to leave it out on the final run. So that's why they don't have a light there or anything like that. And I'm guessing that in future versions, or if there's a version 2 of this or a new mouse from Tek Syndicate, if they ever do that down the road, that they'll probably buff out some of these little edges like this, but totally acceptable in my opinion on a first run for an affordable mouse with the specs that are as good as it is. I mean, come on. You also got your back and forward buttons here on the side of the mouse that you can interact with your thumb, which I do. I use the back button quite frequently on web pages. I don't really use the forward one too much, but I did find them to both be in comfortable position. I didn't find them to be abnormally out of reach. They also have a DPI sniper button, which we've seen on a lot of gaming mice. This brings it all the way down to 500 DPI when you hold it, and it's quite far up on the mouse. Now, the reasoning for doing that is so that you don't press it by accident, and that makes a lot of sense, but it's not something I would probably find myself using, usually because, once again, I usually have my hand sitting pretty far back on the mouse, so for me to use that, it would really take quite the adjustment, almost to have to go from a fingertip to a claw grip for me to actually take advantage of that there. But that's really just subjective to me, and with peripherals, it's always going to be like that. There's always going to be certain parts of it that are just going to come down to personal taste, hand size even. That's why I say, I prefer a smaller mouse like something on the Castor as to a really large mouse like this, which benefits more of a palm grip. Coming down on the bottom of the mouse, really cool looking design pattern down there, but I just wanted to briefly touch on the Teflon Feet down here, which I'm hoping if they do a future version, we see a little bit more coverage in the Teflon Feet. I thought the bottom one was actually okay, but the top one, you could see is actually a little bit thin. I would like to see some more coverage here, and also the Teflon for the top portion seemed to have, it was not as smooth as the bottom one. I actually asked a few people around my house, just to go ahead and do the Pepsi challenge real quick and, feel the bottom one, feel the top one real quick. Tell me which one you think is smoother. And they all said the bottom one, definitely. So hopefully, I don't know if it's a different type of Teflon they used for the top strip, but I'm hoping that they get that ironed out for the second version, hopefully. They also did choose to use a rubber cable here, which I am definitely appreciative of. If you want to see my video I did recently on braided cables, I'm going to link to it right here. But braided cables, a lot of the time what they do is they add drag and extra weight to the mouse. If you don't believe me, just look at the specs of this mouse compared to the Mionix Castor. Now, no doubt this mouse is heavier than the Mionix Castor, coming in at 125 grams versus 93.8 grams of the Mionix Castor, and that's just the mouse itself. But the difference when you add the cable to it is actually quite impressive, because you see that the Tek Syndicate mouse cable only adds an additional 41 grams of weight, while the braided cable of the Mionix Castor adds an additional 47.7 grams of weight. So that added weight is going to create additional drag across your desk. It's going to add additional stiffness to the cable, which creates it when it interacts with things on your desk, it can get caught up quite a bit. And I touched on all of that in the braided cable video, so I'm not going to go too far into that right here. So just go check that video out if you want to hear more about it. So just to sort of summarize and wrap things up here, I'm giving the Tek Syndicate mouse a pretty strong recommendation because it is coming in at only $35. If there are a few things here that if this was like a $70 or an $80 mouse, I probably wouldn't be able to excuse, but for the first generation mouse, coming from a YouTube channel, they're just trying to put out something for gamers that's going to perform well, going to perform accurately, and it's something that pretty much anyone can afford. So I respect that completely. I have a lot of respect for their efforts here, because I'm sure with the kind of hardware in here, they're probably not making a whole hell of a lot of money on these mice. So it's just really great to see that they're putting out a good product like this for gamers, and it performs on par with my Mionix Castor, which is double the price. It's absolutely crazy, and if it wasn't for the shape just being a little bit bigger and not fitting my hand size the way that I personally like it, this would probably be my daily driver right now. So hopefully in the future maybe they will do that. But I'm going to be using my Castor still. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and tell you that this is going to be my permanent everyday mouse, because it's just a little bit too large for my hands. Because I got little baby hands, like Donald Trump, baby hands. John Oliver fans, anyone? All right, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. That's my completely honest and unbiased review for you guys, and I hope you enjoyed it. And I'll catch you next time. Ta-ra.